What would happen if every follower of Jesus believed they actually had a part to play in God's mission? Well, this week we studied Nehemiah's chapters 2 and 3, and after months of prayer, we saw Nehemiah finally got the opportunity to rebuild the broken wall of Jerusalem and go back. But what's fascinating is how that whole thing begins to move forward, because Nehemiah 2:8 said, "The king granted these requests because the gracious hand of God was on me." See, these verses remind us of something super important, that the mission of God doesn't move forward because of human power or strategy. It moves forward because of the gracious hand of God. And so Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem, and then something else happened. He inspected the walls, gathered all the leaders, and then shared the vision that God had placed on his heart. And suddenly that burden wasn't just his anymore, it was everybody's. The people took it as their mission. And in chapter 3, we see the priests and the families and all the other kinds of workers rebuilding the wall together. The refrain there in chapter 3 is next to each other. So-and-so built next to and next to and next to. Now, no one builds the whole wall, but everybody takes their part. And here's the big truth of the passage that we saw. When God gives a burden, his people rise up and build. But the story also exposes something in our hearts that we need to see, because sometimes we'd rather spectate than participate. Sometimes we'd rather doubt God than actually build with him. And sometimes we're more focused on building our own kingdom and building a wall around our lives instead of building God's people up. And that's why the gospel is so important, because Nehemiah rebuilt the wall, but Jesus came to rebuild something far more broken, our lives. Sin left our hearts in ruins, but he stepped into our shame and paid for that on the cross. And now he rebuilds what sin had destroyed. And when Jesus rebuilds a life, man, he invites that person into the mission with him. So the question that I want to leave you with is this: in your life, who needs that same grace that God has shown you? Who might God use you to reach? Because the truth is, he wants to save that person, but are you willing to take a dare that God could use you to do it? Man, you can watch the whole message on our YouTube channel or listen on our Spotify or Apple podcast. I hope this helps you as you seek to follow Jesus more faithfully this week. I love y'all.